black coffee.
This is the Exchange Coffee Podcasting Network. Coffee people talking to coffee people about coffee and things coffee adjacent. This episode of Coffee Memo is brought to you by Kavoya Specialty Coffee, where coffee is always a collaborative voyage. Welcome to Coffee Memo, a podcast where we talk about coffee industry news and current affairs. This is episode 1, and we've invited Kavoya's managing director, Rob Stephen, into the studio to talk about, no surprise here, tariffs. Rob sets aside the headlines and social media chatter to talk about potential consequences and what coffee roasters might do to be ready. So, Rob, you've known me for a long time.
I have.
And you've probably would guess that understanding tariffs and all their consequences and implications for the coffee industry is never going to be listed as a special skill on my resume.
You have a lot of skills.
So for this inaugural issue of Coffee Memo, we've invited you into the studio to talk about tariffs. And knowing me as you do, explain it all to me as if I were me.
Okay. I know how to explain things to you as if you were you, so that works. Yeah, unfortunately, tariffs is something I've been forced to understand over, especially over the last few months. And so it's the reality that we're all living in right now. And one of the things that I think is really important to understand in the current environment is that there's a lot of rumor masquerading as news, right? A tweet is not policy. What somebody said in an interview is not what's going to happen when Customs and Border Protection is filling out a bill,
right?
You know, those sorts of things. So I think I was happy to come in and talk about tariffs today just because I would love to dispel some of those sort of misinformation bits or rumors that people are thinking, because I wouldn't want them to be included in planning.
Great.
Right. You don't plan on rumors, you plan on facts.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, the business environment we find ourselves in is very sort of certainty light. There's not a lot of predictability about the way that something this massive is being rolled out. Normally, right. You know, when governments negotiate tariffs, a lot of people spend a lot of time with economists and finance people and trade representatives, and they work on these things over a long period of time. They come to an agreement. It's well forecasted. It's rolled out in an orderly manner. None of those things are happening. So we all find ourselves in this crazy environment where we're waking up to the news or reading something on social media and finding out that a fundamental piece of our business has changed,
right?
Which is super disconcerting. So I would say, let's start at the beginning with tariffs. Tariffs are supposed to be a tool in the toolbox for a government to protect an industry that they have, either for national interest or because they perceive the current trade imbalance or trade practices to be unfair. Mm-hmm. And they're used all the time. All prior administrations had some level of tariffs on certain products, and other countries have tariffs on our products. So it's not something that was just newly invented, but normally they're low, and again, sort of they make sense. They're there to protect an industry that we have. So when it comes to coffee, it's not a political statement. Tariffs don't make sense because we don't grow enough coffee to have an industry. We have an island, or two, right, that make a less than 0.01% of our national consumption. So we don't have an industry to protect. So we shouldn't have tariffs on coffee. So we do, and that's because the tariffs are being applied in a very broad manner. Whatever comes from this country is going to be tariffed. Now, a lot of people have put a lot of stock into what the Secretary of Commerce, Lutnick is his last name, said on CNBC last week, which was that if a country grows something that we don't grow, it won't be tariffed. And that's an aspirational statement.
Right.
Right. So what he preceded that with, everyone's sort of looking at that video clip. Oh, he said that. What he said right before that was, when we do a deal, then anything that is grown that we don't grow will be excluded.
Right.
Right. So if coffee was grown in South Korea right now, their coffee would not be tariffed, that kind of thing, because we have a deal, that sort of thing. And so right now, the industry is sort of sitting on the edge of their seat waiting to see if that happens. But none of these coffee-growing countries have a deal. And so all of their coffee is being tariffed.
Right.
Right. So with this thing with Brazil, which is really what's on everyone's mind, where they've done what's called a ad valorem tariff increase. So we had a 10% reciprocal tariff on every country. And so Brazil was one of those. And so they had 10%. And then they added 40% on top of that. And that goes into effect on August 7th. And that effectively doubles the price of any Brazil coffee that lands after that date, with some exceptions about transshipment, which are just really sort of window dressing. It's going to affect a very, very small number of containers.
So if something left Brazil before the 7th and it's on the water, it's going to be tariffed, even though...
If its last transshipment, there's a date in October. I'd have to read the executive order. There's a date in October where if it's last... Because what happens with shipment is coffee containers do a hub and spoke system. So it might go from Santos to Manzanillo or Panama, and they take the container off the boat and they wait for another boat that's going to the place it's supposed to be going.
Right.
So that's a transshipment. And if it's left that last transshipment by a certain date, they won't tariff it. But again, you can't manipulate that.
Right.
So it's just if your container is one of the lucky ones that sort of meets that very sort of limited criteria, it won't get tariffed. But let's just assume for the sake of the conversation.
Right. Don't count on it.
Don't count on it. Right. So there's two things there. So it's worth talking about each of them sort of individually. So the 50% tariff is now policy because it's been signed by an executive order. But what we've seen with all of these executive orders is that is the opening gambit.
Right.
So what's happening? A lot of the industry participants are saying, well, there's always another move, so let's wait and see, which I think is wise.
Mm-hmm.
That's what we're doing.
Right.
And so there's lots of talk about delaying shipments to see what could happen. Mm-hmm. Maybe let's buy ourselves a month or two and see. I don't think you're going to see a lot of Brazilian coffee coming in on time paying a 50% tariff, because I don't think that there's a lot of assumption that people in the market want to pay double for Brazil's. And it's nothing against Brazilian coffees. Nobody wants to pay double for anything.
Right.
Right. So I would expect in the very short term that you've got these two things happening. You've got people not wanting to ship Brazil's, new crop Brazil's. New crop starts in August and first shipments are late August and coffee start arriving in September. So this couldn't be worse timing. Right. So you've got people not wanting to bring in Brazil's, and it's the tail end of current crop. So there's not a lot of Brazil's left.
Right.
So what's going to happen to the price on those? They're going to go up.
Yeah.
Right. They're going to go up, and it's just simple economics. The value of the remaining Brazil coffee just went up.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So roasters find themselves in a very difficult position. There's going to be increase on the remaining spots price. There's uncertainty about whether new crop will even arrive, because most people won't want to bring it in at double the cost. Mm-hmm. So there's going to be this at least my opinion, it's just my opinion. Nobody knows what's going to happen. And don't believe anyone who says they know what's going to happen.
Right.
They don't know what's going to happen, but there'll be a multi-month period where everyone waits to see what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So in the meantime, people need coffee. More coffee will come out of Colombia. More coffee will come out of Peru. Lots more coffee, I think, will come out of Africa.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in the short term, roasters will need to get really good at making blends or finding substitutes for the Brazil.
Right. Need to focus on profiles.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, and it's not easy, because Brazil is one of those coffees that has a cost component and a flavor component that's hard to replicate.
Right.
Yeah. So everyone is not just going to feel it economically, but they're going to feel it from there's a lot more work to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, that's not a rosy outlook, but those are the facts on the ground, as opposed to, I read this tweet, or I heard this on this show.
Right.
These are the way things actually are. You want to talk about world peace after this? Or?
So if you were a roaster, what would you be doing right now?
So if I was a roaster, what I would be doing right now is looking very critically at what I use Brazil for, and deciding what short-term substitutions I could make, and then at least having a long-term solution in my back pocket.
Right.
I'm not sure I'd pull the trigger on that right now.
Sure.
But I would maybe say at some point it's going to become apparent in one scenario, it becomes apparent that these tariffs are here to stay.
Yeah.
What's your plan?
Yeah.
And you don't want to formulate your plan when everyone else is executing on theirs, because then you're back of the line. So,
Okay. And what kind of questions are you receiving from our customers now?
what's going to happen?
Yeah.
You know,
They just,
yeah, this is my answer to that, right?
Yeah.
So, but I think that more than that, the questions I'm getting are sort of what we just said, which is, what do I do instead? And so, I'm encouraging customers to. It depends what you're using the Brazil for. Is the short answer, right? So if it's a low cost component, I'm going to suggest that you look to Africans, and if it's more of a, is providing a body component or is doing that, then let's see what we can do in Central South America. Unfortunately, the new crop for Central America, we won't see it till February at the earliest. So we've got this long period of time of find the spots here and see how long you can make them last, and then let's hope that by the time central crop comes in, that there's plenty to go around. My main concern here is that who uses the most Brazils in the United States? The big guys,
right?
The Folgers and Maxwell Houses of the world, right? And all that. So Brazil's a major component because they're low-cost providers, and Brazil's the lowest cost coffee, and it's very useful in the blends, and the American palate likes it. So they are going to have a lot of demand to fill if these tariff sticks, and they're going to come after the coffees that the specialty market uses.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest concern. So I think having a plan in mind where you can decide, you have multiple options for replacing this coffee in the short and long term is your best bet. So it might be get a bunch of samples, get in the cupping room, start working it out. That's probably the best thing you could be doing right now. And if they get lifted tomorrow and it's all clear and everyone goes back, at least you got to do an experiment.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you.
You're welcome. Anytime. Happy to come down from the 90th floor on the elevator.
Yeah. You've been listening to Coffee Memo with Rob Stephen, produced by me, Mike Ferguson. Our theme music for Coffee Memo is Coffee Time by Audio Coffee. If you enjoy this or any show on the Exchange Coffee Podcasting Network, please consider leaving a review, and please subscribe if you haven't already, and tell people about us. You'll find a link to our listener survey in the show notes. Please take the survey. And remember 2 things. 1, you can email us at theexchange@kavoya.com. And 2, black coffee is performed by the one and only Ella Fitzgerald.